What's up, guys? Chris here with Gaming Kinda, a place where I can finally just offload my thoughts that are not a guide and they're not wide sweeping news like we'd go talk about on Work to Game or any of the other channels that Brian and I are involved in. And I can just talk about things that are kind of on my mind that are about gaming. Kinda. And today it looks like Blizzard is on the PTR nerfing relics. So first, let's talk about what relics are and why they were brought into the game in the first place. So for anybody that doesn't know, in Shadowlands, the new player experience is finally being tackled. We have too many expansions now, and it's just cumbersome for somebody that wants to start from level 1 and experience World of Warcraft. And so what they've done instead is you're going to go into a starting zone that is curated and designed to actually teach players how to play in theory. I played through it. I really enjoyed it. And the fact that if they ever want to change it or make it better at teaching a particular class, that they can just go to that one place and deal with it there, kind of tells me that if they ever want to like change up some quests, change up the way that, they're teaching you how to do your rotation, that it's a much easier place to tackle it. So even if it's not perfect out of the gate, I like that. And then you're going to go through the whatever the most recent expansion is, in this case, Battle for Azeroth. And then that'll get you to level 50. And the reason we've compressed it down to a total of 60 levels, with the last 10 being in the current expansion, which will be Shadowlands, is that an RPG should reward you along the way. So you're not going to have it to where, like, I logged in, I leveled twice, it didn't mean anything. No. There's only 60 levels, and we have all these skills to give you. We have all these, some classes get to equip better armor later. We have, you can ride a mount at a certain level, and those have been compressed down. And so you should feel like every time you log in and you get to a level, it's awesome. And that 1 to 50 grind should really be compressed down to being the new player experience. And so you can make that 6 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. We'll just have to see what it ends up being for experienced players in full heirloom and all of that versus a brand new player who's never touched an MMO before. But ultimately, it'll be a very short experience relative to what it is now and relative to what most MMOs on the market are. And then you will go into the current expansion, which now, because it doesn't have this big prior grind, we can afford to really enjoy. And so I'm hoping this is a chance for them to make the Shadowlands experience deeper and more meaningful, instead of being the typical 15 to 20 hour grind that I feel most expansions are, in my opinion. That's typically kind of the pace that I like to enjoy them. Hopefully they can double it. Hopefully they can give me like a full price game out of it, like a full 40-hour experience, something to really enjoy. Now, when you create alternates, you're going to go through that first zone, and then you can either level through one of the expansions, your choice, or you can go out in the world and you can level through dungeons or whatever you want. And if you pick an expansion, it should be paced so that whichever expansion you pick, maybe there's an expansion you took a break from the game and you want to play it, or maybe you're going to create so many alts you can try them all once, and you should get to experience that expansion in its entirety, and that should get you exactly from where you leave the new player zone to 50. And that should do that for you. And then you'll go into Shadowlands, and for new players, Shadowlands will be this big long experience. For alternate characters, you'll have a choice of, do you want to go through that big long experience again, or do you want to just go ahead and be jumped to the end of the story, but you'll only be level 50, and you'll get to do basically a form of world quests to kind of level up, and that'll allow you to kind of start building up in-game some perks with things like, I think, like your covenants and stuff like that will be affected. So we'll see exactly how that shapes out. I'm not too worried about that. That's all current expansion. This is really tackling the new player experience. The problem with this is that if you choose an expansion other than BFA, you're in an old world. And alternates are going to want a certain amount of value generated out of it, especially if it's a person's like second character or third character. And the question becomes, what do we do about eye level on all this stuff? Well, so the entire game prior to the previous expansion has been rescaled. And so basically, if you're halfway through vanilla or halfway through Lich King or halfway through BFA, it's all the same. And that means that when you think about crafting, linen cloth is capable of generating the same eye level as cloths from expansions that are years newer. And so they had to go in and they had to tackle crafting professions in a big way to make this balanced. And so the way they did that is they added what's called relics. And relics are really simple. Basically, you create a base level item and it's got a base eye level. Let's assume 1 for this example. Some items have a base eye level and some are kind of down at 1 or wherever that kind of cloth entry point is. And then you're going to have this optional slot that you can kind of socket into the craft. and it's going to be relic 1 through 5. Relics 1 through 5 can be made out of base materials from each expansion, and it doesn't matter what expansion you make relics from, which means if we're talking about tailoring, for example, I can make relics 1 through 5 out of the vanilla cloth things with linen all the way up to rune cloth, or I can make them out of varying amounts of cloth from expansions that maybe only had one, so I can go make them out of Tide Spray linen from BFA. And so, on my server's prices, for example, it's really affordable to make relic 5s out of windwool cloth if prices stay the exact same and relics stay the exact same, which is why we're talking about this today. And so very quickly you realize, oh my goodness, every cloth farm now has value because that relic sets the eye level and therefore adjusts the vendor price. And so you have vendor shuffles that can take place where you can buy up cloth from people who have a ton of cloth and don't have a tailor or use for it. The market doesn't necessarily need anything from that cloth for transmog and things like that. And it's generating all this cloth from running all this content because now all expansions are created equal. And you're just going to have these surpluses. So what are we going to do with it? We're going to turn it into items and we're going to vendor it. And so these relics were seen as very powerful, very fast, because what you can do is you can craft a pair of, let's say, linen pants, and you can put a relic 5 in this, and you can have basically the level 50 equivalent of linen pants, and they will vendor for like 50 gold or 60 gold or something silly. It's a ton. And what's amazing about this is the relic is costing you, maybe 15 gold worth of cloth, and the pants are costing you, let's say, 10 gold worth of cloth, and wow, I'm doubling or tripling my money. This is going to be the most amazing gold farm ever because cloth prices won't go up at all. Nobody will know about this but me. It won't adjust. I'll just make all this money. Well, first of all, that's not true. People are going to get wise to this. Not only are they already have, because cloth prices right now are so high that flipping is not even profitable. People are buying cloth on my server at a rate that if they turn it into relics, they're literally not doing the math. They're buying all this cloth now, and so they're spending all their gold, and then they've got, let's say, 75, 100 gold worth of cloth per craft sitting there, and then when we get into the expansion, they're going to print money, getting a whole 50 gold back. So they spent 100 gold to sit on it, and after time passes, get back 50 gold? So, clearly, some people aren't quite understanding the math, and everybody's like, but it's super broken. You're going to double your money. Well, only if you bought at those base level prices where they sat during BFA back before all cloths were worth the same. And they're not exactly the same because not every craft takes exactly the same amount, but it does put most cloths in that 2 to 3 gold range is probably where they'll settle. So any cloth that you can think of that sits below that now is going to come up in value. And any farm, any dungeon that you didn't used to run because it wasn't profitable, keep in mind that you basically have a raw gold floor put in it for any cloth that you get, should you be willing to do the shuffle. If not, sell that to another player. They'll do the shuffle. Now, here's where relics failed. Relics didn't factor the amount of time it takes to to craft the relic and then insert it into the crafted item. And at first, it was a lot of time for 5s, less time for 4s, and so on. And that actually meant that in many cases, it was more profitable to craft it with 4s than 5s. They've since nerfed that. And since when I last played on the PTR, they were all the same amount of time. But even then, when I looked at current prices, even on a day that I could find cloth prices at a normal price, these farms were making 7,000 gold an hour. Yes, they were doubling my money, but they were doubling it at a rate of, it's not only about what do you get versus what did you spend. But if you have any capital whatsoever, if you can afford to buy 10,000 gold worth of mats, 20,000 gold worth of mats, then there are a lot better uses of your time. And honestly, if you just have a druid and you're willing to go gather, there are better uses of your time. So it just isn't great, especially because outside of BFA, when you craft these things, you're capped at your inventory size. It doesn't automatically push to the mailbox like it does with BFA crafts. And so you're going to have to babysit it. It's not like you're just going to fill your inventory with cloth and press craft and go away for the weekend and come back and have 50,000 items sitting in your mailbox. That's not what's going to happen here. You're going to have to sit there and you're going to have to make this exchange over and over and over and over. And so it's 7,000 gold an hour, assuming that you are light speed fast at clicking anytime you need to change what you're crafting, anytime you need to clean out your inventory, anytime you need to get more cloth from your mailbox, all of that. So it's probably something less than that 7 to 10,000 gold range. And keep in mind, guys, every expansion we move into, quests paying more, which means daily quests pay more. Things drop for more. Current gear vendors for more. So right now in BFA, people already make 7 to 10,000 gold with general play. And with optimized play, farms can well exceed that. So these relics aren't broken because yes, people are doubling their money, but they're doubling money for less than what is the equivalent of a WoW player's minimum wage. So they're not coming out ahead. They're not winning. So I'm seeing all these creators coming out and saying like, relics are amazing. I'm going to make 50,000 gold on day one. Well, if you're a streamer and you're going to play for 8 hours anyway, that's awesome. But for people who only maybe play 1 or 2 hours a night, a couple of days a week, you're not making very much money for the amount of time it's going to take to sit there and babysit a crafter, just crafting and then checking a mailbox and crafting. It's terribly boring content that pays very poorly. You are better off mining or herbing. You are better off running transmog runs. You're better off leveling up a crafter to actually sell things on the transmog market. You're better off doing probably things like leather farms and cloth farms for the new expansion. There's a lot of things that are likely going to be better, or at least competitive. So it's not broken, but people said it was, so people complained. People that didn't want to do it felt that they were getting left behind on this thing that actually was never a thing. So it seems like, as of today, to get to what I'm actually talking about here, 10 minutes in, welcome to Gaming Kinda, and it seems like they're removing this. It seems like they're nerfing it, and we don't know exactly how it's going to shape out. I'm sure they're going to try some things. They got some time before the expansion goes live. But as of today, it seems like they're pulling it out. And I'm hoping this is just them testing a change or removing something so they don't have to hear people complain and it'll come back. But I think people are misunderstanding what this actually does, and I don't think it needs to be removed. I think it kindly puts a floor on the value of cloth so that new players or younger players, when it comes to the amount of resources and leveled characters they have, whether they've been subscribed for a long time or not, have a chance of making money off of raw cloth. It doesn't actually make billionaires richer because they're going to have better uses for their time. They can go flip pets and things like that, where their capital can get a better yield on the amount of time it takes. But it gives mid-level gold makers something to do with their time. It gives people who are just leveling their crafting something to do where their crafting feels worthwhile, but it yet doesn't have like the recipes like Vial of the Sands and stuff where it can actually make money. And it gives new players this feeling of, wow, I just found this thing. Oh my gosh, I have 200 cloth. Is that worth a lot? No, you should just vendor it. No, it's like, no, you should hold on to that. Congratulations, man. That's 600 gold. Well, my quests have only been paying me like 30 gold. It's worth 600. Yeah, like welcome to the community. Like other players are doing things with that cloth and they're willing to cut you in at 600 gold. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like it can be this thing that invites new players in. The idea that it's driving inflation is just a lack of understanding of how inflation works in these games. Inflation comes from there being too much gold coming in and not enough gold going out. The simple changing of hands, like auction house, the auction house cut is not big enough that it makes a big enough difference. The biggest difference is probably repairs. So I don't think this is a hard driver of inflation on its own. It does kind of turn cloth into a raw gold drop if people are willing to do the extra step, but that extra step takes an immense amount of time. And so if players aren't willing to do it at 7,000 gold an hour, then that cloth won't be 2 or 3 gold. It'll be 4 or 5 gold because people simply aren't willing to craft when it's not that valuable. So it's not a direct raw gold drop, and so I don't think of it as an inflation driver. These games suffer from severe inflation that would cripple any real world economy, and they do that because they want new players to feel relevant. And if you let rich players stay rich players, it doesn't work. But instead, they put systems in these games that allow new players to catch up mechanics for gold. Basically, the dailies from BFA will drop amounts of gold that feel huge if you haven't played since the Burning Crusade. You're going to come back and you're like, yeah, when I logged out, I was super rich. And you're going to log back in. You're going to realize super rich from TBC days was you sitting on 2,000 gold, 5,000 gold, 10,000 gold. And you're mega rich. And you're going to come back and you're going to make that in a day, 2 days, a week. You're going to make it nothing. So I think a certain level of inflation is healthy. We don't have things like rent and food to buy and health insurance and daycare for our kids in game. And so like you don't have to worry about players falling into poverty. They simply don't have money to buy things like cosmetics. I think a raid on average costs a player somewhere in that like 1,000 to 2,000 gold a night. I haven't been a heavy raider the last couple expansions, but that's what I understand that to cost. So correct me if I'm wrong down below. But at 2,000 gold, like, you should easily make that in a week if you're doing enough dailies just for your AP grind. That should not be an amount of money that's stopping you. Really high-end first world firsts, they spend a lot more. They do a lot more attempts per day. They do it a lot more days per week. And they will spend a crazy amount of money for a very small percentage increase. And honestly, they're not what the general economy is supporting. They're not the general player. So I'm really not worried about whether or not inflation helps or hurts them, because they're not everybody else. For the general player, right? The WoW has made it more than clear they're not catering to the race for world first. For the general player and for the new player, a little bit of inflation is good, and relics are something that allow people to truly explore all of the content and not feel that they're being penalized in trade for giving a select group of people a really boring farm that makes a moderate amount of money before we even jump up for the fact that we're probably going to make more than 10,000 gold per hour with general play in Shadowlands. And this is going to be a less than 10,000 gold farm. And unless the vendor prices are going to go up, it's fixed at that, because it's limited to the number of crafts per hour you can make. So it's literally limited by crafting time. So unless they add enchants to the game that make you craft things 7 at a time, or something where it just drastically increases your throughput, it just isn't going to be the game-breaking thing. And so for the people that was saying it was a really good thing because it was game breaking, it was never going to be that. For the people saying it needs to be removed because it's game breaking, it's never going to be that either. So I would say just leave it. It was a nice middle of the road quality of life thing to encourage kind of the middle class gold makers and the low level players to just be able to do what they want and feel like they're moving their account forward. And it seems like a weird thing to tackle. As far as kind of extending out when Shadowlands releases. This seems like a weird thing to go spend time on. So let me know what you guys think below. I think this channel is just going to be me kind of rambling or making posts that I want to make about games that make me smile or make me frustrated or whatever, that don't really belong anywhere else. So it's just going to be a catch-all, and it should all be about gaming. Kinda. I'll see you guys later.